another episode of Rolling with the Punches. We're on episode 6 now. You're joined by myself, Ben Birtles, and Connor Picken. Connor, first things first, mate, how are you?
No, I'm doing good, thanks, Ben. And I'm excited. We've got a fair bit to talk about in this episode, don't we? I mean, not all of it is the most amazing kind of light right now, but it'll be a good episode.
Wicked, yeah. And I think I'll just start touching a little bit on Marvin Hagler. This week, the whole of the boxing world was saddened to hear the passing of Marvellous Marvin Hagler, age 66. It came as a great shock to me, as well as my dad, actually, who was a huge fan of Marvin in his heyday. I guess we'll just provide some context and speak a little bit on his career. In around 1990, Muhammad Ali really exited the sport in a bit of a sad way, and boxing was left with a bit of a void as to who was going to fill, that role of the big global superstars. And along came the four kings, which of course were Hagler, Hearns, Duran, and Ray Leonard. Marvin first won the title and became the undisputed middleweight champion of the world at Wembley Stadium against Alan Minter in round 3. It was famous, of course, that fight for an amazing riot, which actually happened after as a result. Marvin won the title and then went on I believe, a streak of wins that lasted for almost 7 years. It's fair to say he's possibly one of the greatest middleweights of all time. Along the way, he beat Roberto Duran, as I mentioned before, one of the four kings. Tommy Hearns in probably what is considered by most boxing critics today as the greatest fight of all time, stopping Tommy Hearns in round 3. It was 3 rounds of absolute war, which was fantastic and great to watch back now. My dad showed me that fight probably at least 15 times growing up. And yeah, what a career, what a man. And actually, he's one of those people in boxing which nobody had a bad word to say about. So Marvin Hagler, rest in peace.
Mate, that's beautifully said, I think. It's everything that can be said. He was a true gentleman and man inside and outside the ring as well, wasn't he? That's what everyone's saying now. Everyone involved in boxing is coming out and saying he was some bloke inside, but also outside of the ring. So, may rest in peace.
What a fighter. I mean, he didn't just have that ability to slug and go toe to toe and get involved in a war, as we've seen across his career. He was also brilliant. He had an ability to switch stances. Beautiful fight to watch. Punch selection, punch accuracy. Yeah, definitely one of my favorites and one of the favorites of many guys across the boxing world. And I think his career as well just spoke for itself. He lost early on to Willie Monroe and I believe it was Bobby Watts. Avenged those 2 defeats, and the only remaining loss he had was Ray Leonard, of course, in a very controversial fight in which I must admit I scored the fight to Marvin Hagler, but to this day my dad and others argue over who won that fight, and ultimately he left the sport as a king, a champion in many eyes, and an absolute legend. So there you go.
Well, man, it's a sad day, but yeah, that's what you said there. It is beautiful and very true, mate.
But moving on to some more positive news, and perhaps probably the fight between Chocolatito and Estrada was one that Marvin could be definitely happy and proud to see. Connor, I wanted to just basically jump in and get your thoughts, mate. How did you score the fight, first things first?
So I scored the fight 115, 113 to Estrada in the end. I've watched it back twice now, to be honest. And I know it's really controversial. A lot of people kind of won't have that. Maybe yourself don't have that. But I think Estrada, in my opinion, actually took a lot more of the beginning rounds than I think people gave him credit for. That's just the way I scored it myself. It wasn't super controversial. But I mean, the best thing is to describe it an instant classic, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, Eddie Hearn put it as his the greatest fight he's ever seen, which I think was a bit of an exaggeration, but I can certainly see it's got to be up there. I think it was a total of 2,500 punches thrown combined, which is just astonishing. When you think Yildirim only threw 82 in his fight with Canelo, those numbers really, they're put into context. But from my point of view, considering I picked Estrada and I was fairly certain that Estrada would get the job done, it'd be quite easy, I think, for me to just rest on that and say I told you so sort of thing. But actually, I scored about 115 to 113. I agreed with Jose, I think his name is Jesse Reyes, that's it, the judge. I scored about exactly the same as him, but it was very close. And I think there was a few mentions of robbery online, which I think is harsh. My first thoughts after having watched it were he'd been robbed there on one of the cards, and certainly we'll talk a bit about that card in a minute. But for me, I felt Chocolatito did the more accurate and cleaner and measured work. It just sort of depended what you like. I mean, Estrada threw flashy combinations, in a lot of bunches with a lot of speed. But for me, Chocolatito is more accurate of the two across the rounds. But yeah, what a fight.
I mean, he was more accurate. He did land more punches, Chocolatito did, but exactly what you say there depends what you like. And I mean, I suppose also I think watching it live, I probably prefer the flashy combinations and maybe moving a bit quicker. But when we're there, maybe I'd probably agree with you. I mean, I don't know. That's the beauty of it. But I mean, one thing I want to touch upon on this fight, because you mentioned Yildirim, and did you see Eddie Hearn came out, was it a few days ago, and said he paid more to Yildirim than he paid either Chocolatito or Estrada for that fight. And that kind of shows it's quite, obviously everyone knows it's because Canelo is such a big name and how much he brings in, but it's almost insulting to release that as a public information, I think, to Chocolatito and Estrada, the fact that he paid Yildirim more money than he paid either of them.
I think it's the way it goes, mate. And obviously Canelo's the big draw, isn't he? But when you put it like that, it's pretty sad, I've got to say. But those two, I mean, they're all-time greats for me. I think Chocolatito, Roman Gonzalez's career it doesn't get enough credit. And actually, speaking of the pound for pound, which we touched on in the last podcast episode, I've actually moved Chocolatito into my current top 10 after that performance.
Whereabouts?
Right at the bottom. So he slots in at number 10. I actually think number 10, you can make an argument for number 8, 9, and 10 being a super flyweight at the moment. I think you could have Estrada, Chocolatito, and Ioka all in there. They're all huge names, huge fighters, and I can't wait to see them all, keep fighting each other. And I think Eddie can deliver that.
And that's what's beautiful about the super flyweight right now is that none of them, probably because they know the money isn't there if they keep the undefeated record because they're less kind of commercial value isn't as big, but they're just happy to fight each other. And imagine if we saw that now in the other weight classes. I mean, I think if they do all fight each other, they would have all fought each other twice by the time they retire, and we're not going to see that in any other division.
No, you're spot on. Yeah, spot on. And then just obviously it's going to be another one this week. David Sutherland scored that bout 117 to 111, which how many? I'm trying to do the maths. I think he would have needed to give about 9 rounds, I think,
it's 9-3, isn't it? It starts 120, I think. So he gave 3 rounds to Chocolatito, I think.
Anyway, some good news, some positive news on that is that finally a governing body has, after our rants in the past few weeks about them, they've stood up and said something. So the WBA, I believe, has suspended his judging license or officiating license under the WBA, and they're going to give him a chance to explain how and why he scored it that way, which I think is a really positive thing. But look, I just can't see how someone can give Estrada 9 of those rounds. I don't know if you agree, mate, but
yeah, it's disgusting again, and it's also quite nice to come from the governing body because Eddie Hearn can't, as we said in the last episode, can't really do anything. The promoter can't, and so it has to come from the WBA, and hopefully we'll see the WBC follow, WBO, IBF. I think it would be great to kind of see the rest of the governing bodies follow, and maybe after this, use it as an example going forward. So maybe referees will be kind of, I don't want to say it's corrupt, but it's biased. And that's what the word is. Like, no matter who you are, you can't score the fight 117. So there obviously is some bias there. And I don't know where it comes from, whether it's kind of a corruption or whether it's just a hatred for another fighter. I don't know what it is, but it is so messed up and it's disgusting.
Yeah, it was certainly a close fight. And look, if you give that fight for in favour of either fighter, I can sort of see you get away with it. But that wide is just, it's not just improbable, it's impossible for me. But what I just wanted to get your thoughts now, really, which is sort of what's next for Chocolatito. Can you see him coming back again and having another fight? I mean, certainly from my perspective, he doesn't look like he's lost it.
No.
And actually, he gave a fantastic interview. I don't know if you saw it after the fight. just such a happy guy, just such a good bloke. They're both great blokes. I've got so much love for both of them. I'm being a bit of a fanboy here, but I really can say I admire both fights. But yeah, what's your take on that? What do you think's next for both of them?
Well, I agree. Like what Estrada said after the fight was, Chocolatito, he said Choc's a great guy. He deserves the trilogy. I thought I won that. Have to check the cards. Don't know if I was up. And it's like, in his own head, the honesty there is just so amazing. And
oh, mate, I can't tell you how relieving it was to hear those two interviews. It's just like, these guys are proper. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly,
proper.
Mate. Like, real men. I think for Chocolatito, I probably want the rematch straight away because, as we've seen with kind of trilogies before, and I suppose big fights, is you've got to strike while the iron's hot because that's when these fighters can get the most money, and that's what they deserve. All they deserve is the most money, right? Because they've already
particularly Gonzalez.
Exactly, and they've already got their legendary status, in my opinion. They basically do, and they've got the status. And now I know Estrada's got his mandatory with Ringvasai. Is it Ringvasai?
Ringvasai, yeah. I think it's the WBA, is it? I could be wrong.
I can't remember. I'm not sure, but he's got that. But I mean, if I was him, obviously it depends on the money. I'd just give up the belt and then go for the rematch straight away because that strike with the iron spot, that's when the most money's going to be. And you've already got the legendary status. So it depends what he wants. Does he want legacy or does he want money? And that's what's going to boil down to, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be nice to see Chocolatito leave the sport at the height of his powers. So if he now went on to fight, 10 more times and ended up leaving the sport, at a lower level, it'd be quite sad for me. So I think you're completely right when you say just sort of cash in, try and get that trilogy, and then maybe leave the sport because he's already a legend in my eyes. I love Roman Gonzalez, and that fight for me cemented him as one of my favorite all-time fighters. I really do mean that. So yeah,
couldn't agree more, mate. Brilliant. And then I can't wait for the trilogy. If it's going to be anything like the second and even the first one I watched in the build-up, I mean, it doesn't even need to be promoted. It's some fight.
I think that 12th round for me, I mean, it's round of the year. I can't see a round beating it just because, I think in Estrada's corner, they were telling him, you're down on the cards. You need to up your tempo and stuff. And he did exactly that. And not only did he do that, he did that and more. And in the 12th, it just became an absolute war. Fast hands, accuracy. There was so much going on, like from the blind eye, it might just look like loads of hands, but there was so much going on across that round, and it was just a fantastic thing to see. Can't wait for what's next.
And I mean, I think you actually said this to me on voice notes. We were talking about after the fight, and you were like, the only thing that let that down was probably the DAZN commentary, because listening to it and it just I was hoping, I'd love to hear Mike Costello's voice over that 12th round.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too critical because I know DAZN it's early stages a little bit, and they're probably still trying to get things right. But I've got to say, I have to be honest here, and in my evaluation of their commentary, it's not been good enough in recent weeks. And I don't want to say it was biased in that fight by any means, but I felt they favoured Chocolatito a little bit at times. But maybe that's just because everyone loves him. If you know him personally, I can imagine it's just like he just seems such a lovely bloke. But it's frustrating.
It was not good commentary, and it didn't live up to, how do I say it? The commentary wasn't as good as the fight was, and it deserved better commentary. But I mean, as DAZN get better, I'm sure they'll kind of build their commentary team and move forward, hopefully. Yeah,
and basically now I suppose we'll just move on to this weekend's action, which on Saturday, I've got to give it to him. Eddie's delivered for us again. Really good card from top to bottom in Okolie Głowacki for the WBO Cruiserweight Championship of the World. Connor, I just wanted to get your final thoughts. Really, we've talked a lot on this fight, and just wanted to sort of get your final thoughts, and I'll give mine and see where we are.
Yeah. So I mean, my final thoughts. I went through earlier. I was looking at Głowacki's history, and every time I watch the wars he's been in and the fights he's been in, it changes. My mind changes. But I truly think Lawrence Okolie has got his number. I don't see the fight going the distance, really, to be honest. I see Lawrence Okolie stopping him, and I don't know if it's going to be early, middle, late rounds. It's one of the fights I just can't decide because I feel like Okolie will want to sit out the first 4 or 5 rounds, keeping him at his distance, waiting. And then when the time comes, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, maybe leading to championship rounds, he'll want to get him out of there, because I don't think there's any rush, or unless Głowacki kind of knows that and has to come in flying. That might be his strategy, because he knows that Okolie can keep him at his distance. So if Głowacki comes in flying, then we're in for one hell of a fight. But I think Okolie is going to come out on top. What about you?
I don't want to steal other people's assessments of any fight, so I'm gonna say Matthew Macklin did a really good piece on this fight actually in the week with Sky Sports Boxing, and he was basically just saying that because Głowacki's southpaw and tends to fall in a little bit and be a bit lazy. He was just saying that when you're fighting a southpaw, a very dangerous shot is the right hand, and what we know about Okolie is that not only does he bang hard, but the right hand is something that has been devastating for him. So Macklin was making a case for maybe even an early stoppage in which Głowacki just walks onto a huge shot. But I don't believe that personally. I think McGuigan will be a bit more measured in how he brings Okolie into this one. And I think, like you say, it might just take a couple rounds to get going. I think it could be a little bit cagey in a sense that it will be a bit messy early on. A lot's been said about Okolie's style, and he's heavily criticised. And I think that might be because it's just a bit messy. But I think once he catches him clean, like you say, he'll just finish the contest. So for me, I agree. I think Okolie wins this one by stoppage.
And apart from that, I mean, talking about the rest of the card, so we've got Anthony Fowler, Chris Billam-Smith, Ramallah Ali, Ellie Scottney, and there's one other name that I think I've forgotten in there. Who else is on that card?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what is a massive shame. I mean, I know we've talked about him a fair bit. Well, I have talked about him. I've been blowing smoke up his arse on here for a few weeks, but unfortunately, Dion Juma has pulled out of the fight with Chris Billam-Smith, which is came as a bit of a shock and was quite frustrating because Juma had already pulled out previously, and he's got a lot of problem with his eyes. I actually don't know the specifics as to why he's had to pull out of that one, but yeah, very disappointed and hoping Dion can come back from that. But I think who's jumped in Dakar, is it, for Billam-Smith?
I've got the list right in front of me. Let me find it now. It's
I think a bit of an unknown name, but
yeah,
certainly a name with a bit of pedigree, I think. And yeah, he'll look to put on a show. But I'm just so excited to see the whole card, mate. I think Cordina's boxing on it, isn't he?
Yes, that's it. Joe Cordina's. I mean, I've missed him, mate. 2019, he was at the top of his game. He had so much momentum behind him. He hasn't fought since then.
He's one hell of a fighter, for sure, and kid with a really good future. Obviously, he's one of those guys that's had a really good progression, much like Okolie, really. You know, British, Commonwealth, then on to EVU, or however Cordina's career has progressed to date. But I think, he's one that if Eddie takes him through a good progression, he'll win a world title for me, and I can't wait to see him back in action.
And mate, I think almost a sleeper fight on that card is Ramallah Ali versus Beck Connolly, because Beck Connolly's been with it. I mean, she's almost been in with everyone. She's been with Rachel Ball. She's been with Natasha Jonas. I don't know if she's been in with Katie Taylor. I don't think so. Maybe early on. I don't think so though. And it's just maybe she's also been in with I was going to say Savannah Marshall, but I'm not sure. But she's definitely been in with Natasha Jonas and Rachel Ball, and she is tough as fuck, mate. And Ramallah Ali has obviously got a lot of press behind her. She signed to 258 Management. She's got an amazing story. I think she was coming from a family where they were refugees and they had to come to the UK, and her family had given her an amazing life, but then she's now gone against them from what her parents wanted, and now she wants to fight. And even though her parents said they used to fight to get out of where they were, Ramallah Ali's now gone back into fighting, and it's an amazing story. So that fight in Ramallah Ali's second professional fight versus Beck Connolly is actually a really big fight. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so you've sold it to me, mate.
I love it.
Should be a promoter. Yeah. Actually, I wanted to sort of touch a little bit on some news we got this week as well, Connor. Actually, which came from the mouth of Eddie Hearn towards ESPN, which was that the fight between Fury and Joshua is signed by both parties. I wanted to get your take on what that sort of means and whether anything has actually changed for you. What do you think?
I actually think for the kind of diehard or key boxing fans, we basically know it means nothing. I mean, my dad, when I saw him this morning, he goes, "Connor, did you hear the fight sign?" My brother called me, "Connor, did you hear the fight sign?" So yeah, but what's signed is the deal, the agreement on their split, the date in which they have to put the location and the site fee. And as Eddie Hearn has said before in interviews, there's no fight until there's a site and a fee.
Yeah, that was something that frustrated me a little bit because it was a little bit of a contradiction for me from Eddie, which we actually, to be fair to Eddie, we don't get that much. But I thought it was a bit of a contradiction because, yeah, in the past, like you say, he's been focused on once we get the venue and the date and the site fee, then we can worry about it. But on this one, yeah, he seemed to just rush into it. And I think there was a bit of a verbal agreement Bob Arum was talking about this week of just keeping things a little bit more quiet until they've got all that stuff agreed. I think, is it Spriegel from ESPN? That I might be saying his name wrong. So that they've now got 28 to 30 days, I think, to get a venue sorted.
Eddie said he came out and agreed that it's 28 days from when they signed the contract. So we don't actually know officially when that was. Was that yesterday? Was that 2-3 days ago? We don't know.
Yeah, so that's an interesting element into the equation. I think as well, I'm going to quote someone else as well here, but Mike Costello said this week something quite interesting, which was if that fight was to take place in an outdoor arena in the summer in the Middle East, it would be too hot.
Yeah.
So, he was saying if it was July, you can't fight in those conditions, let alone spectate. Do you know what I mean? It's not plausible. So it's going to be interesting now to see where we go with this and whether maybe it will be pushed to a bit later, which I worry a little bit, maybe to the back end of the year, which would be quite sad from a personal perspective. But either way, we're at a stage now where we can at least sit here and say, it's nearly there, sort of. So
That's it.
Yeah.
We're almost there. And I think what you're saying there about the weather, I think September to January is when you can fight outside in kind of Middle East. But what would be interesting is, do you think Abu Dhabi, because they took Fight Island there on the deal, which was like Abu Dhabi Tourism, and that was inside. So I'm wondering if they're speaking to them and kind of almost you swap out the UFC ring for the boxing ring and they go to Abu Dhabi Fight Island, or inside at venues like that. I mean, an inside venue would not surprise me for June.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with that as well is with the Middle East. Obviously, we want 50 to 60,000 people there, including Brits. But the reality of the landscape now with the pandemic is that it's not really plausible, or at least that's how I see it in terms of going into the summer. But I think you can make enough money from gate receipts from rich locals in a smaller venue. And to be honest with you, I agree with Johnny Nelson, which is what he said on Sky Sports News this week, which is just, I don't really give a dog's bollocks where this fight is. I just want to see it. I don't know if you agree with that, mate, but I just want to see. I couldn't care less where it is. Do it in someone's back garden, do it on the cobbles. Do you know what I mean? Bare knuckle. I just want to see Joshua and Fury head to head boxing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I just want to see it. Right, completely agree. But same time, there's some place in my heart which is like, if the UK don't get one of them, a unified heavyweight champion of the world, both British, and neither of the fights is going to be in the UK. That just, it hurts me. But I understand as well, because it's going to have to be the government who would put in the money. And the government can only do that if they get sponsors on board. And the government aren't going to put up 100 million each for the fight. No way. So there's basically zero chance of it happening in the UK. But there's a part of me when AJ came out back after he beat Klitschko and said, that's it, UK boxing is back, I'm bringing it back. And then where's he been since then? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it's just like,
yeah.
I had such high hopes for British boxing to be back and go to the fights and, enjoy that night out. But at the same time, the pandemic is probably a good excuse for them not to have it in the UK. So that's why they're striking now.
Yeah, I think the second one for me has to be in the UK. If it's a 2-fight deal, the rematch has to be in the UK. There's no excuse once you've cashed in on the first one for having that fight anywhere else apart from Wembley or the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. You can't make a case for it being anywhere else. You've made your money. Now you've got to come and give us what we want. And I just thought it was very sad hearing Fury's comments that he doesn't wish to fight in the UK ever again. Because for me, he will finish his career regardless, because he's won that Ring magazine twice, the only UK fighter to do it. He will finish his career regardless of what happens with Joshua as a British boxing legend. And I think the Brits deserve, the amount of people that have travelled out to his fights in America, the Brits deserve Tyson Fury boxing on British shores before the end of his career.
You're right. You put it really well there. It was just like, it was so upsetting. I know he's taking the piss a bit, talking about drinking pints, just wants more money in his pocket, all that. But that interview was in such a shit mood. And I watched that and just thought, part of me thought, you prick. I mean, the amount of support you get, the amount of loyalty that these fans have given you, the support from the books, from the merchandise, from everything, from coming back. I mean, what he's done is completely amazing. He's done it on his own terms, but without the fans, there's no room for it. And for him just to say, what did he say? Las Vegas is my home. What? I mean, that is cruel almost to the British fans who supported him this whole way. Yeah,
I mean, I think the other thing that we have to bear in mind is you have to take things that Fury says with a bit of pinch of salt, because he's a wind-up merchant. And it's quite funny to me how, like, 2 days before Eddie says he signed the contract, Fury's put pen to paper. He says he's not going to fight him and all this kind of stuff on the MTK card. So he's just on the wind-up, mate. That's just him. But I do agree a little bit with you. And as I touched on before, it will be sad for me personally not to see Fury box again in the UK.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, I've never seen him box live. I'd love to. Have you ever seen him box live?
No, mate. So I think it was the Chisora 1 with Fury, which I was meant to go to, but there was a problem with with the trains, which it finished very late. I can't remember the specifics of it, but I've never seen Fury live, which is something like I said, I would regret if he finished his career without boxing in the UK for sure. I'd love to see him live, yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, he's one of those guys you've got to say to your kids that you saw. But then, so is Joshua. So you've got to give that man the credit too.
Very, very true, mate.
Anything else, mate? Anything this week that's pissed you off, or anything you want to talk about?
I'm just trying to think on any fights I want to touch on. I mean, I suppose I was quite upset to see Shannon Courtney, her rematch versus Rachel Bull. I think that's on the Picken undercard for the WBO, I think. That's been rescheduled because Rachel Bull's suffering from coronavirus. It's quite sad. So hopefully she recovers quickly, sending our thoughts out to her. But that was a fight I was really looking forward to because Shannon Courtney, for me, had such progression behind her. And then she just boxed awfully. Am I
right in saying Ebony Bridges has stepped in for that one, mate?
Exactly. And Ebony Bridges is fucking hard as nails, mate. So, I don't know what your opinion kind of is on female boxing, and maybe we could do a segment on this another time, but I love it right now, and I think it's really taking off. And that fight, it is brilliant. Ebony Bridges versus Shannon Courtney. Fair play to have taken that Ebony Bridges at such short notice. Yeah,
no, definitely for sure. You're not going to pass up a shot, to fight on that stage. So it was good. It was good that they've rescheduled it, but obviously sad, as you say, that we couldn't see the one that we were going to see originally, which was Rachel Bull, who I love watching because the names slipped. Who did she box in fight camp for Rachel Bull?
Natasha Jonas, is it?
Yeah.
Was it?
It was.
I've got her track here.
I remember watching her and just thinking, "Wow, you are not only tough, but you are brilliant." And I think a lot of the women's fights at the moment are showing up the men's fights a little bit. For certain, I think sometimes the style in which the female fighters seem to box is just ends up being a war at times. So it's good to watch.
No, that was it. She fought Beck Connolly, beat Beck Connolly, and then she went and fought Shannon Courtney in fight camp, which was when she beat her.
Yeah, correct. That's the fight. Courtney, sorry. Yeah, it slipped my mind. But yeah, excited for that one for sure.
And I think that's the good thing about female boxing right now is that it's obviously nowhere near, I think, the boxing level and that kind of the height of Chocolatito Estrada, but it's the same. They're all happy to fight each other. They've all fought Beck Connolly. They've all Shannon Courtney's happy to step in with Ebony Bridges at the last minute. Rachel Bull's fought Natasha Jonas. Natasha Jonas actually didn't accept Eddie's last offer to her, so I'm not sure what happened with her, but Katie Taylor, her fight's next being announced on Friday. And Cecilia Breakhouse, her fight recently was amazing. I think women's boxing right now is great because they're all happy to fight each other. I mean, the only issue for me is the 2-minute rounds. I think they deserve 3-minute rounds, to be honest. I don't like the fact it's 2-minute round in female boxing, but that's my only issue with it, really.
No, I can see that. Yeah, for sure. I think an interesting question I wanted to ask you, which is one that I've not just been asked by, the boxing fraternity that I know, but I've actually been asked this question by casual fans of the sport, which is, how far do you think Katie Taylor would go in the men's pros? Because I know my opinion on this, but how far do you think Katie would go in the men's? Because she's exceptional.
Oh, what a question. I think she'd go really far, mate. And I think it's because she's just not scared to have a tear up. And although obviously that's not really what you want, to kind of have a long boxing career, but it's the way she chooses her angles and goes from body to head. So I think it's so hard to compare because I actually don't think once you're that level of an athlete, the gender has actually much to do with it.
She's exceptional, mate. Exceptional fight all the way through from the amateurs to the pros. She's been, the fighting pride of Ireland for me to date. She's exceptional and someone that I think Ireland should be very, very proud of.
What do you think? How far do you think she could go?
Certainly British, and certainly beyond that for me. Obviously, it's very hard for a lot of reasons to make such a comparison, and impossible to make such a comparison. But I'm just talking based off the level in which she boxes at, and I think she's exceptional. I think she could push on even further potentially. She's got a lot of admiration and love for Katie. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix doc about her, which was just brilliant. Like her upbringing, her life, how she fell into boxing, the dedication. She's got all the attributes of a fantastic world champion. Yeah,
and the relationship with her trainer as well. I think, it's an amazing story. And I mean, one promoters absolutely jump on. And that DM, have you seen that DM with Eddie Hearn? I might pop it up on the screen now so people can see at home. It's a DM where Katie messages Eddie and goes, "Hi Eddie, I hope you're doing really well." Something along the lines of, "I've kind of seen what you're doing for boxing at the moment. I think it's great. I'd love to discuss going pro."
Seen it, yeah, brilliant.
It's amazing. I'll put it up now so you can see it. And it's just from that to where she is now, mad. I mean, what a job Eddie has done with her and what she's done, obviously herself. But it's amazing.
Well, listen, Connor. I think we've covered a fair bit there. Obviously, there are a few more things to cover in the coming weeks. Obviously, Dylan White on the 27th, which I think you can join me in saying I'm absolutely buzzing for. We'll probably have a fighter interview out on the Friday, so look out for that. But apart from that, Connor, it's been a good episode, and thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, cheers guys, and thank you, Ben. Yeah.